Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his face as he crawled out from under the power control panel. The metal was hot to touch, and sparks kept shooting out every few minutes. He had been working on this same panel for 3 hours, trying to keep the mining station from falling apart. "Human, why do you waste time on broken systems?" Commander Zephyrs' voice came from behind him. The tall reptilian alien stood in the doorway, his green scales catching the flickering emergency lights. "This station is old. It will die soon." Jake stood up and looked at the commander. "Sir, I can fix this. The power system just needs some changes. If we reroute the energy flow through the backup circuits, we can keep everything running for months." Zephyr made a sound that Jake knew meant he was not interested. "You humans think you can fix everything. This station was built by the Thakari. They are master builders. If they could not make it last, how can you?" Jake felt tired. He had been having this same talk with the alien crew for weeks. Every time something broke down, he found ways to fix it. But they never listened to his ideas. They thought humans were too simple to understand real engineering. The mining station, Nexus 7, floated in the darkness of space, far from any planet. It had been digging precious metals from asteroids for 20 years. Jake was the only human on board. The rest of the crew were different types of aliens, reptilian saurians like the commander, insect-like Thakari workers, and a few others. The station groaned and shook. More warning lights started flashing on the control panels. Jake quickly checked the readings. "Commander, the main power core is getting too hot. We need to shut down some systems or it will explode." The Thakari engineers said this would happen. "Eventually," Zephyr replied. "When old stations break, they cannot be saved." Jake ran to another control panel. His fingers moved quickly over the buttons. "But I can balance the power load. Look, if we turn off the mining equipment and use that power for cooling, we can keep the core stable." A new alarm started blaring. The station's computer began speaking in the alien language that Jake was still learning. But he knew enough to understand the message. A massive solar storm was heading toward them. The star in this system was shooting out dangerous energy that could destroy anything in space. Zephyr's scales changed color, a sign that he was scared. He immediately pressed his communication device. "All crew to evacuation stations. Solar storm approaching. We leave in 1 hour." Jake felt his heart racing. "Wait, we don't have to leave. I can strengthen the shields. The storm will only last a few days. If we adjust the power systems right, we can ride it out." "You are wrong, human," Zephyr said firmly. "Solar storms kill everything. We have ships. We will go to safe distance and wait." Other crew members started running through the corridors. Jake saw his workmate Crix, a Thakari engineer with 4 arms and compound eyes. "Crix, tell the commander. You know I fixed the recycling system last month, and the gravity generator. I can make the shield stronger too." Crix's mandibles clicked together, which meant he was thinking. "Jake Human has done good work. But Solar Storm is too dangerous. Thakari wisdom says to flee from Starfire." Jake felt desperate. He pulled up the station's blueprints on his tablet. "Look at this. The shield generators have backup power lines that nobody uses. I can connect them to the main grid. It will double our protection." But the aliens were not listening anymore. They were busy loading the escape ships with supplies and equipment. Jake watched as they took the valuable mining tools, the food stores, and even his own repair equipment. "Commander, what about me?" Jake called out as Zephyr walked toward the ship bay. The reptilian alien stopped and turned around. His cold eyes looked at Jake for a long moment. "You wanted to stay and fix things, human. Now you can try." Jake felt ice in his stomach. "Sir, you cannot leave me here. There are 3 escape pods. I can come with you." "Pods are needed for important equipment," Zephyr replied. Your small human brain does not understand the danger. You will try to fix the station and fail. Then you will die. This is better than watching you slow us down." The other aliens walked past Jake without looking at him. Some of them had worked with him for months, but none of them spoke up for him. They all believed that humans were too primitive to survive something like this. Jake stood in the main corridor as the last alien crew member entered the ships. Through the thick window, he could see the solar storm getting closer. It looked like a wall of bright fire moving through space. The ships powered up their engines. Jake pressed his hands against the window and watched as his crewmates flew away, leaving him alone on the dying station. The silence felt heavy and scary after months of alien voices and machine noises. He looked at his watch. The solar storm would hit in 6 hours. The power core was already failing, and life support would probably stop working in 3 days. He had no ship, limited food, and a space station that everyone said could not be saved. Jake sat down on the floor and put his head in his hands. For a few minutes, he felt completely hopeless. Then he remembered something his father used to say back on Earth. When everyone tells you something is impossible, it just means nobody has tried the right way yet. He stood up and walked back to the control room. If he was going to die on this station, he might as well try to prove the aliens wrong first. Jake walked through the empty corridors of Nexus 7, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The solar storm had hit 2 hours ago, and the station was shaking like a ship in rough water. Emergency lights flickered on and off, casting strange shadows on the metal walls. He carried a toolkit in one hand and his tablet in the other. Every few steps, he stopped to check another system. The air recycler was working, but making grinding noises. The water purifier had shut down completely. The heating system was barely keeping the temperature above freezing. "Okay, Jake, think," he said to himself. What would Dad do? His father had been a mechanic back on Earth. Not the fancy kind that worked on spaceships, but the kind that fixed old cars and farm equipment. Jake remembered watching him work in the garage, taking apart engines that other people said were beyond repair. The problem with specialists, his father used to say, is they only know one way to do things. When that way doesn't work, they give up. But there's always another way if you're willing to get creative. Jake reached the main engineering section. The room was huge, filled with alien machines that hummed and blinked with colored lights. The Thakari had built everything in straight lines and perfect angles. Each system had its own space, its own power supply, its own purpose. It looked impressive, but Jake could see the problems right away. "No wonder this place is falling apart," he muttered. He pulled up the station blueprints on his tablet. The Thakari design was like a human body where each organ worked alone. The heart couldn't help the lungs, and the brain couldn't share power with the muscles. When one part failed, the whole system started dying, but humans built things differently. On Earth, engineers made backup systems for their backup systems. They connected everything so that when something broke, other parts could pick up the work. Jake started making notes on his tablet. The life support system was failing because it only had one power source. But there were mining lasers in storage that weren't being used. Those lasers had their own power generators. He could disconnect them and use that power to keep the air recyclers running. The solar storm shook the station again. Jake grabbed onto a support beam and waited for it to pass. Through the thick window, he could see the storm's energy hitting the shields. Bright flashes of light lit up the darkness of space. The shields were holding, but barely. Jake could see cracks forming in the energy field. The aliens had been wrong about the storm destroying the station immediately, but they weren't wrong about it being dangerous. Jake opened up one of the wall panels and looked at the wiring inside. The Thakari used different colored cables for different systems. Blue for power, green for data, red for emergency systems. But they never mixed them. Each color had its own path through the station. "This is crazy," Jake said, pulling out a length of blue cable. "Why would you waste so much space?" On human ships, engineers ran all the cables together in bundles. If one system needed more power, it could borrow from another system. If a cable got damaged, the signal could find a different path. Jake spent the next 4 hours crawling through maintenance shafts, mapping out every cable and pipe in the station. His clothes got dirty and his hands got cut from sharp metal edges, but he kept working. By the time he finished, he had a complete picture of how the station was built. The Thakari were amazing builders, but they thought like insects. Each part of their hive had one job and only one job. They never imagined that parts might need to work together in new ways. Jake made his way to the dining area and heated up one of the remaining food packets. As he ate, he sketched ideas on his tablet. He could take the power system from the mining equipment and connect it to life support. He could use data cables from the communication system to create backup controls for critical systems. He could even turn some of the empty storage rooms into workshops. The station shook again, but this time Jake smiled. Each shake meant the storm was testing the shields, and the shields were still working. The aliens had underestimated their own construction. After eating, Jake went back to work. He started with the easiest fix first, the water purifier. The machine had shut down because its control computer had failed. But Jake found another computer in the entertainment system that the crew used to watch movies. He disconnected it and wired it into the water purifier. It took him 3 tries to get the programming right, but finally clean water started flowing again. Jake filled up every container he could find. If he was going to be stuck here for weeks, he would need plenty of water. Next, he tackled the air recycler. The machine was working, but struggling because it was designed for a full crew of 20 aliens. Now it only had to handle 1 human, but it was still running at full power. Jake found the controls and turned it down to 20%. The grinding noise stopped, and the machine started running smoothly. By the end of his first day alone, Jake had fixed 3 major problems and had plans for a dozen more improvements. He made himself a bed in the engineering section, close to all the important systems. As he lay down to sleep, he could hear the station's heartbeat, the hum of machines, the whisper of air through vents, the distant rumble of the power core. Aliens had abandoned this place because they thought it was dying, but Jake could feel that it was still alive. It just needed someone who understood that being alive meant being able to change and adapt. "Tomorrow we start rebuilding," he said. Into the darkness. 3 weeks had passed since the aliens left Jake to die. The solar storm was long over, but Jake was busier than ever. He had turned the main engineering room into his workshop, with tools and parts scattered across every surface. Cables ran along the walls in new patterns, connecting systems that had never talked to each other before. Jake stood back and looked at his latest creation. He had taken the power core from a mining laser and connected it to the station's main grid. But instead of just plugging it in like the Thakari would do, he had built a switching system that could move power around automatically. When the life support needed more energy, it could borrow from the lights. When the shields needed to be stronger, they could take power from the heating system. "Let's see if this works," Jake said to himself. He pressed the activation button. The station hummed differently now. Instead of the steady drone it had made before, there was a more complex sound, like a symphony instead of a single note. Lights throughout the station became brighter and steadier. The air felt fresher. Even the artificial gravity seemed more solid under his feet. Jake checked his tablet. Power efficiency was up 30%. System failures were down to almost 0. The station wasn't just working better than when he arrived. It was working better than it ever had. A soft beeping sound came from the communication console. Jake frowned. Nobody should be trying to contact the station. The mining company thought it was destroyed, and no ships were supposed to be in this area. He walked over to the console and turned on the receiver. A woman's voice came through the speakers, speaking clear English with an American accent. Unknown station, this is Probe Athena 4. I am detecting active systems and life signs. Please respond. Jake's heart jumped. Another human. He quickly pressed the transmit button. Athena 4, this is Jake Morrison on mining station Nexus 7. I'm alive and well. There was a pause. Then the woman's voice came back, full of surprise. Jake Morrison? The records show this station was abandoned 3 weeks ago during a solar storm. How are you still there? It's a long story, Jake replied. Who am I talking to? I'm Katie Bell. I control Athena 4 from Earth. I was doing a survey of this system when I picked up your energy readings. According to my instruments, your station is running more efficiently than it should be possible. Jake smiled. I made some improvements. Over the next hour, Jake explained everything to Katie. How the aliens had left him behind. How he had started fixing the broken systems, and how he had begun rebuilding the station using human engineering ideas. Katie listened to everything, sometimes asking technical questions that showed she really understood what he was doing. Jake, what you're describing shouldn't work, Katie said finally. You're mixing different alien technologies in ways that violate their design principles. That's exactly why it does work, Jake replied. The Thakari build things like puzzles. Every piece has one place and one purpose. But humans build things like toolboxes. Every piece can be used in different ways depending on what you need. Katie was quiet for a moment. I need to see this for myself. I'm going to request supply drops from passing human ships. We need to document what you're doing here. Over the following days, Katie became Jake's lifeline to the human world. She arranged for supply ships to drop off food, tools, and raw materials. She also sent him technical manuals and design blueprints from Earth, which gave Jake new ideas for his modifications. That with better tools and more supplies, Jake's work accelerated. He rebuilt the station's computer system using human programming techniques. Instead of having separate computers for each system, he created a network where every computer could help with any task. When the life support computer got overloaded, the entertainment computer could help. When the navigation computer wasn't being used, it could assist with power management. Jake also redesigned the station's layout. The Thakari had built everything in separate sections, but Jake connected them with new corridors and service tunnels. He moved critical systems away from the outer hull where they could be damaged by space debris or radiation. He created backup control rooms so that if one area was damaged, the station could still be operated from somewhere else. The most ambitious project was rebuilding the shield system. The original Thakari shields were strong but inflexible. They either worked at full power or not at all. Jake designed a new system with dozens of smaller shield generators that could be adjusted independently. If asteroids were coming from one direction, he could strengthen the shields on that side. If solar radiation was the problem, he could tune the shields to block specific types of energy. Keta, you should see this, Jake said during one of their daily conversations. I've got the shields running at 60% power, but providing better protection than the original system at full power. How is that possible? Katie asked. The Thakari were trying to stop everything with brute force. I'm being smarter about it. Why block a laser beam with thick armor when you can deflect it with a mirror? As the weeks passed, Jake's confidence grew. Every problem he solved taught him something new about how to combine human and alien technology. He started keeping detailed notes of everything he did, sketching diagrams and writing explanations. He had a feeling this information might be important someday. The station had become something completely new. It still looked like a Thakari mining platform from the outside, but inside it was a hybrid of human and alien engineering. It was more efficient, more flexible, and more reliable than anything either species had built alone. "Jake," Katie said, during their latest conversation, "I've been in contact with Earth. They want to send a full engineering team to study what you've done. This could change how we build everything in space." Jake looked around his workshop at the cables and computers and improvised systems that had become his life's work. "Tell them they're welcome to come. But warn them, once you start thinking like this, you can't go back to the old ways." Jake was installing his newest creation when the proximity alarm started blaring. He looked up from his workbench, where he had been building a device that could repair damaged hull plates automatically. The alarm meant ships were approaching. The station. He hurried to the control room and checked the scanner displays. 3 ships were coming toward Nexus 7. Jake's heart sank when he recognized the lead vessel. It was the same ship that Commander Zephyr had used to escape during the solar storm. "Incoming vessels, this is Nexus 7, Jake said into the communication system. "State your business." There was a long pause. Then Zephyr's familiar reptilian voice came through the speakers, sounding confused and angry. "This cannot be correct. Nexus 7 was destroyed in the solar storm. Who is using our station identification codes?" Jake smiled grimly. "Hello, Commander. This is Jake Morrison. Remember me? The human you left to die?" Another long pause. Jake could imagine the shock on the alien commander's face. Finally, Zephyr spoke again. "Human Jake, how are you alive? The station should be frozen wreckage by now." "I made some improvements while you were gone," Jake replied. "Permission to dock is denied. This station is under human control now. You cannot deny us access," Zephyr snapped. "This station belongs to the Galactic Mining Consortium. We have salvage rights." Jake checked his weapon systems. The mining lasers he had converted for defense were fully charged and ready. "Commander, I suggest you scan the station before you make any threats. You might be surprised at what you find." Through the viewports, Jake watched as the alien ships began their scanning procedures. He knew what they would see: a station that was not only intact but operating at levels far beyond its original specifications. Power output was higher, structural integrity was stronger, and system efficiency was better than when it was first built. The scanning took 10 minutes. When it was finished, Jake could hear excited alien voices chattering in the background of the communication channel. Finally, Zephyr spoke again, his voice much more respectful than before. "Jake Morrison, we request permission to board and inspect the station. Our scans show impossible readings." "Permission granted," Jake replied. "But you come aboard as guests, not owners, and you touch nothing without my permission." An hour later, Jake stood in the main docking bay as the alien crew entered his station. Commander Zephyr led the group, followed by Crix the Thakari engineer and several other aliens Jake recognized. Their eyes were wide as they looked around. The docking bay, which Jake had redesigned with better lighting and more efficient cargo handling systems. "This is not possible," Crix chittered, his 4 arms gesturing at the modifications. "These systems should not work together. Different technologies, different power requirements, different design philosophies." Jake crossed his arms. "Funny thing about different technologies, they work great together if you're smart about it. Want to see more?" He led them on a tour of the station. In the life support section, he showed them how he had connected the air recyclers to the water purifiers, so that waste heat from one system helped power the other. In the power section, he demonstrated his flexible grid system that could automatically balance energy loads across the entire station. The aliens followed in stunned silence. Every few minutes, one of them would stop and stare at a particular modification, trying to understand how it worked. Jake enjoyed watching their confusion turn to amazement. "Human Jake," Commander Zephyr said finally, "these modifications exceed original station specifications by significant margins. How did you achieve this with primitive human knowledge?" Jake felt a flash of anger. Primitive? Commander, I've been keeping the station running for 2 months with spare parts and creativity. Your advanced alien engineering left me a dying wreck. My primitive human methods turned it into something better than new. Before Zethver could respond, new alarms sounded. More ships were approaching, bigger ones this time. Jake checked the scanner and saw a convoy of vessels with Galactic Mining Consortium markings. Great, Jake muttered. The corporate bosses are here. The lead ship requested permission to dock, identifying itself as carrying Inspector General Vexthara of the Mining Consortium. Jake had no choice but to let them board. Within an hour, his station was crawling with alien bureaucrats, engineers, and executives. Inspector General Vexthara was a tall, thin alien with purple skin and multiple eyes. She examined every one of Jake's modifications with a team of specialist engineers. They took measurements, ran tests, and filled out countless forms on their electronic tablets. Human Morrison, she said finally, your modifications to this station represent a breakthrough in space engineering. The consortium wishes to purchase your techniques and implement them fleet-wide. Jake shook his head. Not interested in selling to the company that abandoned me to die. Perhaps we can arrange compensation for the misunderstanding, Vexthara replied smoothly. Misunderstanding? Jake's voice rose. You left me here to die because you thought I was too stupid to save myself. That wasn't a misunderstanding. That was attempted murder. Before the argument could continue, Katie Bell's voice came over the communication system. Jake, I'm detecting multiple human ships approaching your position. The cavalry is arriving. Jake looked out the viewport and grinned. A fleet of human vessels was dropping out of hyperspace, military escorts, engineering ships, and what looked like a mobile construction platform. The lead ship was flying the flag of the Human Space Engineering Corps. Inspector General, Jake said to the purple alien, I think you're about to meet some people who are very interested in my work. And unlike your company, they actually value human contributions to space engineering. The human fleet commander's voice came over the radio. Nexus 7, this is Captain Lisa Parker of the Engineering Corps vessel Pioneer. We're here to offer you full support and protection. The Human Colonial Authority has declared this station to be under human jurisdiction. Jake watched as the alien officials looked nervously at each other. The balance of power had just shifted dramatically. What had started as a salvage operation had become a diplomatic incident. Commander Zethver, Jake said, turning to face the reptilian officer who had abandoned him. I believe you wanted to see what primitive human engineering could accomplish. Well, here's your answer. 6 months after the human fleet arrived at Nexus 7, Jake stood in what used to be the main conference room. Now it was a classroom filled with eager young engineers from across human space. They had come to learn what the media was calling Morrison's method, the art of combining different technologies in ways that made them stronger together. Remember, Jake told his students, alien species build things to last forever in perfect conditions. But space isn't perfect. Asteroids hit you, solar storms fry your electronics, and equipment breaks down in ways nobody expected. That's why we build things that can adapt. One of the students, a young woman named Amy Chun, raised her hand. Professor Morrison, why didn't aliens think of this before? They've been building space stations for thousands of years. Jake smiled. He still wasn't used to being called professor, but the Human Space Engineering Corps had insisted on the title when they made him director of the new Hybrid Technology Institute. Different species think differently, Jake explained. The Thakari are like master craftsmen. They can build beautiful, precise machines that do exactly what they're designed for. The Saurians are natural organizers who create systems that run smoothly for centuries. But humans? We're troublemakers. We look at a perfectly good machine and ask, what else can this do? The students laughed. Jake had learned that humor was a good way to help people understand complex ideas. Through the classroom window, Jake could see the construction crews working on the new sections of Nexus 7. The station had grown from a single mining platform into a sprawling complex that served as both a research facility and a training center. Human and alien engineers worked side by side, learning from each other. The door chimed, and Katie Bell entered the classroom. She had arrived 3 months ago to become Jake's chief assistant and co-researcher. Her expertise in AI systems had helped Jake develop even more sophisticated control networks for their hybrid designs. "Sorry to interrupt," Katie said, "but we just received confirmation from the Centauri Station project. The Morrison method installations are working perfectly. They're reporting 40% better efficiency than standard designs." The students cheered. Centauri Station was the first major human outpost to be built entirely using Jake's hybrid techniques. Its success meant that the method would soon be standard throughout human space. After class ended, Jake and Katie walked to his office, which overlooked the station's main engineering bay. Below them, teams of human and alien engineers were working on new prototype systems. The sight still amazed Jake. Aliens who had once dismissed human intelligence were now eager to learn from him. "The Galactic Engineering Council wants to schedule another meeting," Katie said, sitting down across from Jake's desk. "They're offering you full membership and asking for permission to teach your methods to other species." Jake leaned back in his chair. The council was the most prestigious engineering organization in the galaxy. 6 months ago, they wouldn't have considered letting a human join. Now they were begging him to share his knowledge. "What do you think?" he asked Katie. "I think it's time," she replied. "Your techniques have proven themselves. Human-built stations are lasting longer and working better than anything else in space. Other species need to learn this, or they'll be left behind." Jake nodded. He had been thinking the same thing. The galaxy was becoming a more dangerous place, with new threats emerging from unexplored regions of space. Everyone needed the most reliable, adaptable technology possible. A soft knock came at the door. "Come in." Jake called. To his surprise, Commander Zethver entered the office. The reptilian officer looked uncomfortable but determined. He had been coming to the station regularly, taking courses in human engineering methods. "Jake Morrison," Zethver said formally, "I have completed the basic hybrid system certification program. I request permission to join the advanced course." Jake studied the alien commander who had once left him to die. Over the past months, Zethver had worked hard to understand human engineering principles. He had even apologized publicly for his treatment of Jake, calling it a failure of judgment that could have cost the galaxy valuable knowledge. "Permission granted, Commander," Jake said, "but I have a condition. I want you to help teach the course on crisis management. You know better than anyone what happens when people make decisions based on prejudice instead of facts." Zethver's scales changed color slightly, a sign of embarrassment. "I will do this. It is important that others learn from my mistakes." After the commander left, Katie smiled at Jake. "You know, 6 months ago you would have thrown him out the airlock." "6 months ago I was angry and scared," Jake replied. "Now I'm too busy building the future to waste time on old grudges." That evening, Jake stood on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Nexus 7 had become the center of a new kind of space engineering, one that brought together the best ideas from all species. Human supply ships arrived daily, bringing new students and researchers. Alien governments were requesting human engineers for their most important projects. Katie joined him at the window. "Any regrets?" she asked. Jake thought about it. If the aliens hadn't abandoned him, none of this would have happened. He would still be just another engineer, fixing other people's designs instead of creating his own. No regrets, he said finally. Sometimes the best things come from the worst situations. They thought they were leaving me to die on a broken station. Instead, they gave me the chance to build something that will change the galaxy. In the distance, Jake could see the lights of construction ships building the next phase of the station. Soon, Nexus 7 would be large enough to house 1,000 engineers from dozens of species. They would all learn to think like humans, too. See problems as opportunities, to find strength and flexibility, and to never give up when everyone else says something is impossible. The human engineer who had been left to perish had become the teacher who would reshape the galaxy, one hybrid system at a time.